Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to the Australia-China CSIRO collaborative event on unlocking biotechnologies for health. My name is Virginia Birrell and I am the CEO of the Australia-China Business Council. I am absolutely delighted to have you joining us, and I hope that wherever you are coming from around Australia, that you're going well. And I certainly send my best wishes to you all on behalf of everyone participating today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the country, both from where I am here in Melbourne and with the benefit of Zoom, to those attending from other parts of Australia. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I thank Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO, for supporting us to run the Australia-China Science Series to bring renewed focus on the long-standing scientific collaboration and business opportunities between Australia and China. CSIRO is a valued supporter of both the ACBC and the Australia-China Science Relationship. With over 660 joint publications, more than 320 staff visits pre-pandemic, hundreds of Chinese first language speakers within its ranks, and numerous MOUs promising collaboration on some of the world's most pressing problems, CSIRO and its collaboration with the Chinese Academy of Science continues a long-standing relationship based on scientific endeavour and science diplomacy. This is our fifth in the science series with CSIRO, and we hope there'll be more to come. And I'd like to just take a moment to reflect on the global issues we've successfully covered over the past 11 months together. We looked at hydrogen as part of Australia's future energy and discussed regional collaboration efforts. Drought affects Australia and China equally, and we delved into soil science and agricultural methods to build drought resilience and highlighted major environmental issues in both countries. We unpacked current market and future potential in alternative protein sources, including the huge growth in the China market. We addressed plastic waste and analysed international plastic value chain from raw material production, packaging and recycling through to bioplastics, alternate materials and innovations in industry. And all of these recordings are available to our members in our Insight Centre on our website. Which brings us to today, and arguably the most important topic, biotechnologies in the health sector, an area where Victoria maintains a long-standing global reputation of excellence. We're privileged to hear from today's speakers who have been part of impressive biotech projects as varied as extended wear contact lenses, vaccine development, regenerative medicine, biosensors, and much, much more. With extensive international experience, they'll discuss product development and prototyping to manufacturing and distribution. Presenting today, we have Dr. Helmut Thissen, Team Leader for CSIRO Manufacturing and Director of Biomedical Materials Translation Facility, Dr. Judy Scoble, Biology Group Leader for CSIRO, and Jeff Malone, CEO of the BioMelbourne Network, whose work is focused on creating links between companies, research organisations, financial markets and government to foster greater collaboration and opportunities for business involved in biotechnology, medical technology and health innovation. I remind our viewers today that a copy of our speakers' detailed bios have already been emailed to you and will also be placed in our chat box. For those on the call today who've submitted questions, thank you very much. We'll do our very best to get through as many as possible in the time available. I will now pass over to Dr. Helmut Thissen, who will take us through his presentation on biomaterials, regenerative medicine and biosensors. Thank you, Helmut.
Thank you very much for the very nice introduction, and thank you very much for giving me and giving us the opportunity to speak here today. Well, let me just share my screen, and I hope you can see this. Yeah, can you see this? Yes. So look, I'm first up today, and I would like to talk about our work in biomedical devices. So really that involves biomedical materials and devices, and some of the opportunities that lie ahead and some of the challenges that we're trying to address. So Australia, you know, because I'm first up, I'm going to say something about CSIRO more generally, reminding you what actually CSIRO stands for. That's the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. And that's, of course, Australia's premier government research organization. This organization has delivered solutions for, you know, across a broad spectrum of industry sectors for the last 100 years. We have about 5,000 staff all across the country, and every year we work together very closely with more than 3,000 industry partners. There's a few other interesting statistics. We are, for example, by far Australia's largest patent holder, and that reflects, you know, our focus on you know, working with industry translation in particular. Some of the success stories that you may connect with CSIRO include the development of Wi-Fi. That's probably the biggest success story that CSIRO has to offer, but you know, that's really across a broad range of industry sectors where CSIRO has some of these success stories. I will today, you know, just mention one of them, which is the success story related to the extended wear contact lenses. This was a technology developed more than 20 years ago between CSIRO and the CRC for Eye Research and Technology, as it was called then, and CIBA Vision in the United States and Novartis in Switzerland. You know, essentially this was a you know, a technology which allowed improved oxygen transmission to you know, really allow wearers to suddenly wear contact lenses not just for the day but for 30 days continuously. This you know, technology is a good example for biomedical device from many different aspects. It's really a good example for a medical device. You know, when we consider this, there's many other medical devices made from metals, from polymers. There are, you know, devices that are being implanted. There are devices that are being used as biosensors, but there are also devices that only go into the body for a short amount of time, such as urinary catheters. In all these cases, the point I was going to make is that we need a suitable bulk material for these medical devices, but we also, very importantly, need to consider the interface between the medical device and the tissue environment or the biological environment in which this resides. And that interface is something that I'm particularly interested in and that my team is interested in. And so, you know, there's a lot of, you know, focus on that, on these interfacial interactions also into the future. So I guess the conclusion here is the focus has shifted from these bulk materials to really these interfaces. So, you know, from an industry perspective, and also from a government perspective, why is MedTech, or why are these biomedical devices an excellent target? Well, manufacturing is an industry in transition. And so, you know, it's certainly, we're after higher margins, lower volumes, we're after high tech, we're after intellectual property supported technologies and smart manufacturing. You know, in the Australia-China context, of course, it's also important to consider that Australia ranks very, very highly in medical research and biomedical research. So what are some of the, you know, the things that we work on currently, and what are some of the challenges ahead? Well, first of all, an example that we work on currently is that all medical devices are associated with infection rates. some of these medical devices, such as contact lenses, they have quite acceptable infection rates, so they probably can't be improved much further. But some others, such as urinary catheters, have really shocking infection rates, and so that is an important target for us when we develop, for example, antimicrobial technologies for these medical devices. And so, here's just one example for a technology that we have developed, which is very importantly a one-step technology that can be applied on medical devices, so that it can actually be translated easily into a manufacturing process. These ultra-low fouling coatings present antimicrobial compounds in addition to these coatings preventing bacterial attachment, so that we can offer multiple layers of defense. As usual, I guess, for CSIRO technology, we have patented this, and we have, of course, also then published this in the peer-reviewed literature. Of course, also we have worked with industry partners on developing this technology. So what is important for industrial translation, really, in the context of, example, here a coating process? Well, it has to be highly effective. It has to be extremely reproducible. It has to be simple to integrate into a manufacturing process, as I said before. It has to be one step, ideally, and also, of course, it has to be cost effective. When we have developed such a technology, it is extremely important that we consider at this stage, well, how do we actually get to translating this technology? And that's an important point for me to mention here. We have this translational gap, which is holding back a lot of developments, a lot of technologies, which have potential to go to full-scale manufacturing. And so there's not only a funding and investment gap, as you can see here in the slides, but there's also a gap in terms of the facilities that enable this to happen. So for the, if you are a small company, let's say, and you have developed this technology, or you have perhaps developed this together with CSIRO, then you can look around and you will see that there are centers and facilities that can help you with this translational process. And so one example for that is the Melbourne Center for Nanofabrication, the biggest clean room facility here on the Southern Hemisphere. That is, of course, located in Clayton. Many of you will know this. And this is a facility where you can go to start translating some of these technologies. However, that's only that facility only operates under ISO 9001, so you can only go so far when you try to translate the technology. When it actually gets to biomedical materials and devices, CSIRO has therefore, together with Monash University, developed an infrastructure which we call the Biomedical Materials Translational Facility, or BMTF. And that is actually an ISO 7 cleanroom facility with an associated PC2 biological laboratory, which is operating under more stringent quality management procedures, and that includes ISO 9001, ISO 17025, and we can also carry out work under GLP. So these facilities, and this facility here in particular, can assist us and can assist companies in this translational process. Just one example for where we see the future is really the very important topic of antimicrobial resistance. You certainly have heard about this topic, and you increasingly read about this in the papers, but certainly this is the next big problem on the horizon. Not everything is about COVID, of course, and so it's been a long-term problem coming, that antibiotics lose their effectiveness, and that we have to look for alternatives, really. This problem has led to CSIRO putting together a mission in this area, a CSIRO antimicrobial resistance, or AMR mission, which is basically a conglomerate of people within CSIRO that are targeting this issue. It's been estimated that if we don't do anything about this, then 10 million deaths will be a result of this per year in the future, and that's of course increased health care costs, a decline in not only human healthcare costs but also global livestock production, etc. So it's a big problem. Industry, therefore, has some industry has already recognized this, and I guess in the context of infectious diseases and also antimicrobial resistance, the goalpost have changed in some respect, because industry is now increasingly demanding from us, the researchers, that we develop anti-pathogen technologies rather than antimicrobial technologies. So, that includes then antimicrobial or antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral technologies. An example for an Australia-China collaboration that we're currently undertaking actually includes exactly this topic, where we are developing anti-pathogen technologies together with our partner at the Chinese Academy of Science in Shenzhen. And the title of this project is COVID-19 Detection and Intervention, Development of Cutting-Edge Technologies. So you can see where this is leading and what we're trying to do. With that, I would just like to conclude that biomedical devices are an outstanding target for investment, for collaboration in the Australia-China context, and that it's essential to consider access to a dedicated translational facility, as I said before, at the start of any research and development activities, and that, again, antimicrobial resistance is a topic of concern into the future, and will be a focus area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helmut. That was very interesting, and thank you also for highlighting investment opportunities, because Victoria is renowned as a great innovative state. So thanks for highlighting that. Now I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Judy Scoble, Biology Group Leader at CSIRO. We're really lucky that Judy's been able to join us today, as she and her team are flat out, and I'm sure she doesn't mind me saying that, but flat out working on COVID vaccine development. Really exciting to have you, Judy. And while you can't speak on specific topics relating to the work you are doing at the moment, we're looking forward to your presentation on enabling research for health applications. So over to you, Judy. Thank you.
So hello, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. It's a very exciting time at the moment in, I think, biological research and biomedical research, as we're understanding, the world is changing very rapidly, and I think scientists have such a role to play in making things better. I'm an unashamed protein chemist, so my talk is going to be very much protein centric, but I just wanted to give an overview of some of the things that we do in the biology group and how we interact with people. I think it was really good to see Helmut's slide emphasising the way that we partner. It's something that's incredibly important to us at CSIRO. We certainly do some internal projects, but I would say within my group, probably 80 or 90% of our work is outward facing. So we partner and we try to fill the gaps. So we're always very interested in working with others. So I'm the group leader for biology, and under me we have 4 teams with areas in expertise in protein engineering, so design of constructs, expressing in E. coli. We have protein production, which is more about mammalian expression, but also looks after purification, industrial biotechnology. which is much larger scale microbial growth. And then we've got a newly developed CGMP biologics team. And then outside our group, but there at CSIRO, we have all sorts of all the backup you might need. So that if a project was involving bioconjugation, for instance, to make biosensors, we have a chemistry team with expertise in bioconjugation. If we're looking at drug design, we have medicinal chemists. If we need to develop specialised bespoke assays, we have the stem cell research group. We have they can develop cell-based assays and interactions between materials and biologics. Obviously, we can collaborate with Helmut in his area so that we can tie in things. So in a sense, CSIRO can be a one-stop shop to deliver the outcome that our partner needs. I think that's the thing to really emphasise. What our interest is we see success as our partner's success. We want to work with our partners to produce the success. And we can, in the broader CSIRO, we can reach out to a lot more analytics, chemistry, and so on if that's what the project requires. So I thought I'd just give a couple of examples of projects going through different areas of the group and how they might, what their relevance is in the health space. So at its most basic level, you know, in our research labs, we would be partnering for protein production. So we might, we have some of our partners view us as that they might be a virtual company and they view us as at their research labs. Other partners, it might be a case that they've taken their project so far, but they need good quality reagents to take it a bit further. They might need some of our expertise, or simply that their team's overwhelmed with doing some of the things that they're doing, and they can outsource some of the areas to areas where we can contribute. So if we were looking at a project might come in, a client could come in and say, you know, they might have already decided what's an appropriate expression host, or they might be saying, okay, you know, just advise us. And they can give us the attributes that they're after. So they want it to be a cheap process, they need it to be a scalable process, they would need it to be, the protein might need to have particular modifications. And so then from that, we can help to tailor the appropriate construct. We would then optimize it, the production of it, and purify it. We can do things like tag cleavage or production of antibody fragments, for instance. So there's all sorts of things that we can do. And so this is often in the space of reagents. So the protein might be needed to work up in vitro assays, or it might be needed to, you know, to generate antibodies against it. It might eventually be a therapeutic in itself, but we're needing to do some early stage experiments. So these sorts of experiments would go through the research labs. Work can happen there a lot quicker and a lot cheaper than work that might happen in a production type environment. And our partners are typically, well, it can be anyone. It can be academics, small companies, or much larger companies. And you know, we work right across the spectrum. In a typical year, the research labs might see 20 to 40 small projects coming through with maybe 40 to 80 proteins purified and delivered to our partners. And this is work that's ongoing. We often find that, you know, we'll have a long-term relationship, as for instance, a recent project to strengthen a patent position. I think it was some 16 constructs that were related to the original construct that we produced and purified, analysed for the team, did SPR analysis and so on. So we could actually really nut down to the interaction. So, you know, we really partner a lot in this space. The other thing that's important is that projects coming through to our large-scale labs will often require development happening in the research level. So what we find is that when we're partnering, and particularly at the moment in times when things are happening very, very fast, where we've got change, where there's a requirement for a rapid response, our partners have not had time to work up purification processes. They've got a great idea and they needed to go from great idea to vaccine in a very, very short term. And so then we would take on the whole project, which would be the development stage all the way through to the actual production stage. One of the things that's really important is we enable drug discovery. So we partner with companies, and there's certainly this has happened with a number of collaborations. Our client will have a target druggable enzyme, and so they've done the background biology, and they know that this enzyme plays a key role in a particular disease, and that it's in such a way that if we could block its action, then, you know, we could have an outcome that we want from the disease. One of the areas where we would often we are very, very strong in is fragment-based drug discovery. So that is a method whereby you don't start off with a known drug. What you start off is a chemical library of all sorts of small fragments of drugs. So typically 100 to 350 kilodalton sort of size. So very, very small in drug terms. And we would produce the protein for their client, and they'd be using it in their biological assays. We'd produce the protein and we'd put it into crystallization trials. And typically that we find that it might be different constructs are required for both of those activities. Having got the protein crystallized, we're able then to screen our library. So initially you would screen the library in a high throughput method, for instance, by SPR or mass spectrometry. These are techniques where you can take your protein in solution and just simply see out of a library of 1,000 compounds, which ones actually bind. So it doesn't give you any information about where they bind, but it would say these ones are binding. And then you would do the structural biology side, which is to actually crystallize your protein, soak in these fragments and look at where they're binding. And then you look for ones that are binding in the active site, because obviously if it's not binding near the active site, it's unlikely to affect its activity. And then you might look and say, well, okay, I've got a fragment that binds at this part of the active site and a fragment that binds at this part of the active site. Our medicinal chemists then get to work on it and might then generate a larger molecule that encompasses both of those fragments, and that might suddenly have many, many orders of magnitude better binding. And so this is a well-established path to drug discovery, and it's something that we have worked with partners to achieve. And it's a very, very exciting area of work. Another exciting area of work, last year we produced a vaccine to go into phase 1 clinical trials here in Australia. And as we all know, with COVID, it was the sequence became available in the middle of January, and it was a race. The whole world was impacted. The whole world was there together, having to work in this space. And so we were able to contribute. In this particular project, we were partnering with an academic client, and they designed a construct. So from the time of the sequence being available, it took them about sort of 4 weeks to have designed a construct, have it synthesized, and start small-scale expressions. It was an extraordinarily fast time. They then, their expertise is cell line development, so they produced stable cells for this material. We, in the meantime, we're working with that same construct, but it's a much faster opportunity to do it in transient expression so that we could work up the purification procedure. So this all happened in our research laboratories. So there was a team of about 8 to 10 people in the research laboratories producing this protein and working up a purification procedure. We were also made the material in the research laboratories to go into toxicity studies so that we were able to support the clinical trial material later. In the course of the purification, we discovered that we had to re-optimize the purification a couple of times through. One of the learnings from this was that the final material had properties that were somewhat different from the transient, so that we had to then rejig a lot of our work. But then we did some productions at scale in the facility. We finally went through with doing the CGMP-like production. Now in Australia, for phase 1 clinical trials, you can make material in a clean room, but it's not necessarily under our TGA oversight, or the TGA regulates from phase 2 onwards. For phase 1 clinical trials, they are regulated, but they're regulated through the Hospital Ethics Committee and the quality assurance programs. So we run a clean room, which is under a quality management system, which enables this sort of work to happen in a very, very rapid fashion. Fully GMP would always take longer, but we were able to from receipt of our stable pool in the middle of April to sending off our material to be bottled at the end of early June. So the timeline's are slightly out there. So early June, we had it sent off. So it was an extraordinary tight timeline, and it was an extraordinary collaboration between ourselves, the academic partners, an Australian biotech company, and a huge consortium of people who were working together to develop the analytics and to do all of the in vivo work. And I thought I'd share a couple of slides from our work in the facility. This is the cell culture team. I think this photo was taken at about 2 a.m. in the morning when they'd finally got their bioreactor inoculation on. And this is the downstream team working here. And an aside, I'm one of the people in plant, and I will be doing this sort of work again tomorrow. It's a very, very busy and very exciting time making these vaccines. But I think to get from, you know, an understanding of a sequence of a new virus to having some material shipped off with less than 6 months was just an extraordinary path forward. And from that, CSIRO had already been in plans to develop a cGMP facility. It was something that we had identified that was absolutely missing in the Australian landscape, and where we would find that, again, this gap between the academics and the industry partners who can take the project forward. And so to have a facility where you could make material to phase 1 under TGE regulation or to phase 2, and to make the material in that sort of level of quality, but still as quickly as possible for our partners, and obviously as affordable as possible for our partners, because, you know, there's a lot of investment at this stage, so that we can help our partners to develop their process and to get their material to the phase 1 clinical trial and onwards to market. So we're building this facility, and it will be completed in November, and then we're going to be working on getting it established, qualified and under regulation. So it's designed to be a single-use facility with bioreactors between the 50 to 200 litre scale, and all of the purification equipment will be single-use. This is going to make it a lot easier to run, because our facility, unlike maybe a typical manufacturing facility where it can be built and have the same product going through maybe for 20 years, we don't expect to ever see the same product twice. To us, actually, success means we'll never see it again, because it's gone on and been partnered and taken further. So we're not directly manufacturing. What we're doing is we're enabling people to get to that manufacturing stage. And I think that's very clear, needs to be understood. We're enablers rather than direct competitors of any companies. We just want to get things to that next stage. To support it, we're going to be having a QC laboratory, a fully GMP QC laboratory. And the intent is that that will be available not just for projects to support going through our facility, but it'll be there for projects that are maybe going through other facilities, so that if there's a project where a team needs QC, they can come independently to us and get this independent QC analysis of their materials. And so we'll be open for business in next year, and we're really looking forward to opening up this space. It's a space where we see a real need in the marketplace. We also have big microbial labs. So in the microbial labs, we don't make things for phase 1. We're not running them under a quality management system at this stage, but what our expertise is in developing processes that are then able to be tailored to be directly transferred to a manufacturer. So again, in that enabling space, where our client can have a process which is very much optimized on the research side, but we can take it then through to the industrially relevant and appropriate scale and quality. So, you know, for instance, using defined media, things in bioreactors, not shaped flasks, things very, very controlled. And so this industrial biotech laboratory can do production all the way up to 400 litre scale, but we also have a lot of smaller scale bioreactors, so we can use those for optimizing processes. And the projects coming through there can very much be medical projects, and where we would be then outsourcing the tech transferring to a contract manufacturer. But we also have a real interest in agricultural, for instance, applications and so on, where our products can be directly going into field trials if appropriate. So at this stage, we're not running this one under a quality management system, but the other laboratories we are. Down the track, this is something that we're considering we'll move into, but we're really trying to understand if there's a need in the marketplace for that. And I think that's really all I wanted to do, was just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of some of the really exciting things we do in the biology group. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Judy. That's very exciting, and congratulations on your terrific work. It's very exciting, and it's interesting to hear that you've done all that in 6 months, virus to vaccine, which is outstanding. Finally, I'm very pleased to introduce Jeff Malone, the CEO of the BioMelbourne Network. I know Jeff has invaluable knowledge, not just on the science side of things, but also the business opportunities available in this sector. And he has the unique perspective of working for many years in China, so brings all that to his conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing So over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Virginia, and I want to thank the ACBC for having me and CSIRO. And it was great to hear Helmut and Judy speak about that translation gap. And I've certainly sat in a room a number of times with Helmut working exactly in that space from the industrial side. And I think some of the words that I heard pretty regularly through both of their discussions was partnering and consortium. And I think that's partly what I'm going to talk to today and try and help you understand a little bit more about the Victorian health tech industry ecosystem and the ecosystem that exists around that, the people that they'll be partnering with and that'll be involved in those consortium, and the depth of the ecosystem and the health of the ecosystem that we have that provides the support through that translation gap, and a little bit also about how you can get connected into that to find opportunities to help your own organization. So with that, I'll just share my screen. All right. So given this is part of the ACBC, I thought I would first paint a picture of how Melbourne sits and Victoria sits in relation to some of the other places in the Asia Pacific. Certainly you can see on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most competitive, you can see that across the bottom there that Melbourne ranks a 4 all the way across manufacturing, R&D, logistics, and sales. And that is very competitive, and we're going to hear a little bit more as we go through about what makes Melbourne and Victoria competitive. So Victoria itself is a leading location for commercial activity. So looking at Asia Pacific now coming down and looking across Australia, you can see that Victoria holds about 37% of the medical technology and pharmaceutical organizations in the country, and with just under 600. And we have about 75,000 people involved in the life sciences, working directly involved in life sciences, which is the highest number in the country. Some of the companies that CSIRO and others will be working together to support, these are some of the larger commercial operations. I think there's over 180 startups as well here in Victoria across the various sectors. So CSL, obviously names you'll recognize: CSL, Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, Ego Pharmaceuticals, et cetera. On the pharmacy side, you've got companies like Invitech, Thermo Fisher, Trajan, Planet Innovation, all operating on the medical devices and diagnostic side. So we've got a pretty good spread. But the export impact is certainly not even. Vaccines and blood product exports dominate the state's export story. So we, from a pharmaceutical perspective, in 2019, we were just about $3 billion in exports, and medical technologies and vitamins and supplements came in under 200 million. So it is a pretty heavy domination of pharmaceuticals. If you look at pharmaceuticals around Australia, Victoria holds about just over 47% of all pharmaceutical exports for the country. And thinking about the partnering and the consortium and the ecosystem that is required to deliver drugs or diagnostic devices and medical devices, you really require an entire ecosystem. And this gives you a little touch point on some of the key elements of that. Certainly industry associations that you see in the bottom right-hand corner, ourselves, BioMelbourne Network, Odds Biotech, MTP Connect, and others are all located here in Victoria. We have venture capital organizations and investment managers. We have a very healthy startup ecosystem, and that continues to grow. And of course, world-class and globally recognized universities. We'll touch on that in a moment. And clinical trials is critical, and we'll paint a little bit of a picture of how some of these elements come together to make Victoria competitive. So Victoria is a global location for R&D. We're one of only 4 cities in the world with 2 or more universities in the top 40 for life sciences and medicine. And we get over 40% of all research funds across Australia come into Victoria. Monash University was ranked second in the world for pharmacy and pharmacology, and highest in the Asia Pacific region. And I think one of the things that underpins this and is really important is this R&D tax incentive, because that R&D tax incentive of 43.5% allows companies to, it really helps facilitate the work that they do here by giving, again, 43.5% of every dollar that's spent on research and development is returned to that company at the end of the year. Melbourne has R&D capabilities across a range of sectors, from drug development to, we've got infectious diseases, cancer, regenerative medicine, medical technologies and devices, and neuroscience. So there's a three-legged stool that really is important for, or at least three of the most important legs of the stool here, that R&D tax incentive, which we've spoken a little bit about. Clinical trials is another. And when companies come to Victoria, or companies are in Victoria doing research and development, the other parts of that they need to be able to do are clinical trials. So why are clinical trials here so strong? Well, we've got, Victoria has over 35% of the national dedicated phase 1 facility beds for the whole country. We are globally competitive, and of the companies doing work here in clinical trials, a great portion of their business is from overseas organizations doing their clinical trials here in Victoria. And part of the reason, three reasons for that: cost efficiency. Australia clinical trials are typically 28% more cost efficient than overseas in the US, and that's before the R&D tax incentive, and 60% less after you take into account the 43.5%. Speed, the clinical trial process is a lot faster than it is in the US. And I think that's important. That third element is important to remember, that we don't sacrifice quality to gain speed. We simply have very streamlined processes, and the research is conducted in a way that we rank highest in the Asia Pacific region for productivity, impact, and one of the most rigorous patent protection systems in the world. And data from the clinical trials here can be used to support international regulatory applications, including US and Europe. If we look at Australia as a location for doing your clinical trials, you can see that phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trials, you can see we rank 5th in phase 1, 10th in phase 2, and 11th in phase 3. And so that certainly paints a picture of, for a country that's relatively small and relatively distant from other places physically, we certainly punch above our weight in this space. Now, and I'll briefly paint a picture for the pharma and biopharma sector, where there are lots of business investment opportunities here across this whole range. So companies are coming here to do early drug discovery. Companies are coming here to do early stage preclinical development and phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. The clinical development and drug development, and some of the things that Judy mentioned around vaccine manufacture and drug development capabilities and early production are really important elements of that. And that leads into the manufacturing capabilities. And we certainly have, Australia has a stable health system here for doing clinical trials, and it's globally recognized. Another important element of this that can't be overlooked is that we've got 20 years of sustained state government support in Victoria, bipartisan state government support, and that has really driven the funding that's been focused on areas of comparative, give us a comparative advantage for investments in skills, science, medical research, and infrastructure. The medical technology and pharmaceutical sector is well recognized, and certainly 20 years ago, BioMelbourne Network was founded, and so this is our 20th anniversary this year. Melbourne continuously invests in large-scale infrastructure projects: the Victorian Heart Hospital, Australian Synchrotron, Royal Children's Hospital, Australian Animal Health Laboratories, Regenerative Medicine, Aiken Head Centre for Medical Discovery, etc. And this year's budget is no different. We've got 68 million for health-related research, 650 million for the Australian Institute of Infectious Disease, and others through the $2 billion Breakthrough Fund, $20 million for the Australian MedTech Manufacturing Center, and on. So, and you can find out more about these specifically, but it goes to show the strength and the commitment that we have from the local government, which underpins that ecosystem. And the Victorian government has a range of offices all around the world, from San Francisco all the way through the Asia Pacific region, and it makes it very easy to get in touch with Victoria through the government offices. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about BioMelbourne Network and the role that we play in the ecosystem. So BioMelbourne Network ourselves, we're the industry peak body for the health tech industry in Victoria. We've got about 204 members and growing, and we have thousands of members across the industry primarily here in Victoria, across biotech and pharma, medtech and digital. We've got academic research and healthcare and services organizations. So the health tech industry for us, the organizations we don't represent doctors themselves. So we don't represent anyone doing direct patient care, although they may be part of our research organizations, et cetera. So it's front-end biomedical engineering research, pharmaceutical and biotech development and manufacturing, medical technology development and manufacturing, digital solutions, vitamin supplements, and all the support services that go around and help in that translation pathway for all the various medical devices and pharmaceuticals and other things that we are commercializing. So we have our new strategy, and our purpose, the reason we're here, is really to help foster and grow that innovative, globally competitive health tech industry. And that was the reason we were founded with Victorian government support 20 years ago. And we continue along the same path fundamentally today, but we'll be doing that in new ways. And I'll tell you just a little bit about what we're doing in that way. Our strategy right now has 5 key elements: data and insights, identifying opportunities, advocacy to support the needs of the health tech industry, health tech industry development and strengthening, and then sector promotion. So data and insights. So one of the core things that we are doing is providing insights and data to support either the Victorian government or the industry on challenges that we may be facing. So that may be an opportunity for the government has come to us and said we need to develop a research. We need to research all the startup companies in the state. And so we went out and developed a complete database of all the startups in the state of Victoria. And we also certainly supported the Victorian government industry through insights and understanding impact of things like the pandemic. Identifying opportunities. So we're working with the health tech industry. So basically, we take some of that data and insights we gain from that data. We work with the industry, we work with the Victorian government, we look at priorities for the sector, and we'll set up working groups with various folks, key players from, again, industry and the Victorian government, to work together to try and identify what are the issues and how do we resolve those, and work towards getting those results. A lot of times, part of the solution for some of these issues that we find is advocacy. So we do advocate for sector priorities. That might be making sure we maintain the R&D tax incentive that is so critical to doing research here in Australia, working on other things with patent boxes and other initiatives. We are also here to help be a trusted advisor to the Victorian government and the health tech industry. So when they need advice or insights and connectivity, we can support them with that. And also to support the Victorian government on initiatives as they're trying to roll out new government initiatives, such as the $2 billion Breakthrough Fund or mRNA Victoria. We're involved in those as well. So the health tech industry development, we're here to strengthen the health tech industry. So a lot of the public portion of that would be the events that we run and participate in. And those are training and symposia, providing insights on business or how to commercialize products. We also are working with developing a new virtual networking platform partially in response to the pandemic, where people aren't physically able, as we are today, not able to get together in a room to share insights and to talk to each other and network. So we want to create a platform where people can do that online. We work with collaboration and general member support as well. And then sector promotion. So it's about giving our members opportunities to actually make connections into other ecosystems, whether those are overseas or other places in Australia. We're here to help become that facilitator of making those introductions and helping to facilitate your business needs. And that's partly in response to the fact that people, as I think we've spoken before, we can't travel anymore. We're not able to go to conferences and meet people serendipitously like we used to. So having a consolidated place where you can go and connect directly into the ecosystem is invaluable. And we also help raise the profile of BioMelbourne Network through various activities, and this being one today, and provide promotional and advertising opportunities for the organizations within BioMelbourne Network. So I think with that, I will say thank you, and I think we're going to give it back to Virginia to take us through a little Q&A.
Thanks, Jeff. That's terrific. And BioMelbourne Network has a special place in my heart because 20 years ago, I was working for the Committee for Melbourne when it was actually initiated and then spun off as a standalone organisation. So congratulations. It's absolutely wonderful seeing all you've achieved over those 20 years. I know there have been a few CEOs along that road, but I'm very proud of what you've achieved. And also, just as a sideline, I know you're aware of the work that we are doing with the Australia-China Health Accelerator on the Global Talent series, which really ties into those international regulatory applications that we hope can happen in Victoria through investment in Victoria, so companies can expand globally. And if I may ask you then to perhaps on that line, expand on that, because you mentioned Victoria has capabilities in medical device development. Can you explain more about that part of the industry and why we may be attractive for companies based in Asia?
Yeah, in the years leading up to taking over as CEO of BioMelbourne Network, I worked. Not only did I live in Thailand for 4 years, in China for 8 years, and Indonesia for 2 years. So I've had firsthand business experience in developing products in all of those places. But I worked specifically between this ecosystem in Singapore, and Singapore has amazing research as well, and and I think we saw in one of the earlier charts where they are absolutely a leader in research, but they don't have the translation ecosystem that Victoria has. And so for us, we can not only help support their research organizations and their small startups and even medium and enterprises to actually take their ideas and commercialize them. We have amazing, not only research and development, but also innovators, companies who do product design and development like Plant Innovation, Design and Industry, Tricycle Design, and others, Outer Space Design, who are all there helping them create the designs they need, prototypes, and actually getting them into early stage production, setting them up with manufacturing, whether it's here or back in their home country. So we have really a whole ecosystem for clinical trials and everything else that fits exactly their needs, that they don't, again, fits very much like a glove with the gaps that they have in that ecosystem in Singapore and Southeast Asia.
Thanks, Jeff. Now we're running out of time, which is terrible, but I do have perhaps a quick question for each of Helmut and Judy. Judy, producing a biologic insulin vaccine type of product under the goods manufacturing practice requires well-defined controlled processes. How would a researcher or SME get their process to the point that it would be able to be manufactured under GMP?
You're right, it is. To be fully GMP, you have to have a lot of knowledge and have a lot of repetition in the process. I guess what we're trying to help at all stages of the process. So at the very early stages, our research labs are there, and we would develop a process. And because we've been in the space now, we're familiar with the way that a process for GMP is quite different to a process that's research-based. So we would develop a suitable process. Then we can do the fast track, where our material, if it's for a clinical trial in Australia, where we can make material of the appropriate quality in a clean room under a quality management system with the appropriate documentation analysis, but we don't need to have all of those levels of repetition to make it fully GMP. So that would be a way of getting things through to that phase 1 very quickly. In the meantime, then, in our GMP facility, we can be doing the technical batches and the necessary ones, so that as soon as the phase 1 trials completed, we've got fully GMP material to go through to the phase 2. So we try to fill those gaps to bring things quickly through to the market. And I think at the moment, in particular, with our current pandemic, speed is just suddenly so critical. So I think that's really where we're trying to fill that gap in the marketplace.
Thank you. Now, a very quick question for Helmut, which has come in from one of our guests. So it is a question without notice. So Michael Wadley, who's zooming in from China, is asking, and apologies if you have addressed this, with constrained Australia-China relations, are there restrictions for security reasons or better pathways to approach cross-border collaborative projects?
Look, I think there's on both sides, there's clear guidelines for how to assess projects and their implications, for example, security implications, and so that has been established. So that should really not be a big hurdle, especially not in the medical and medical device and as an example, biologics space.
In my experience, unless you're working on a project that has direct defense interest or something like that, outside of that, sort of standard IP protection rules apply. It's no different working with partners in the Asia Pacific region as anywhere else, and certainly Australia is seen as a very secure place for your IP, and so working with Australia and Australian product developers and research organizations, et cetera, is seen as a pretty safe bet. So I'll have to take that offline as well, but yeah, no issue.
Thank you. And we do have other questions. Thank you very much for addressing those. And we are really running out of time, but I will just quickly address one question, which I won't ask you to speak about because it's to do with the seaweed cattle feed. Wotan from the China Construction Bank sent through a message. If I could say, Wotan, it's the product is Asparagopsis, and the CSIRO website does have details and a contact box. So if I could just ask you to jump on the CSIRO.au website and search for that topic, you should be able to find information, or contact us, please. So in summary, thank you so much. What an amazing session. We could talk for another hour, I'm sure, but I know, Judy, you're back to your lab. Helmut also, thank you, and Jeff as well. We are very busy at ACBC at bringing you the best of what we can offer in relation to Australia-China relations across all sectors. We have an export program about getting your goods to China on the 15th of September, and our half-day, very exciting Australia-China Health Summit, which I hope all of you will join us with. And we're covering some unique opportunities for international companies wishing to carry out R&D in Australia as one of our many topics. 14 quality speakers for a terrific online session, so please zoom in for that. We'll also be working with CSIRO, our Western Australian and Queensland branches, and Victoria on a hydrogen update in November, and looking at the developments since last year's session that we ran with them. You'll receive booking details on all of these events coming up, and you'll also get a write-up from this session. So please check your spam and junk mail, because sometimes it hides in there. So in closing, I just want to say thank you so much to Judy, Helmut and Jeff for joining us, for our guests for zooming in, for the staff who've worked hard behind the scenes making all of this happen. And our thanks obviously to CSIRO for their wonderful support of ACBC, and look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.